Hey, what's up guys? It's Jacob here from Unlittle Me, and today I just want to talk to you about self-awareness. How we can actually be more self-aware in our day-to-day lives, because self-awareness is actually a really huge integral part of understanding what causes our bodies to respond in fear, or causes our bodies to respond so quickly and so instantly to certain visual auditory cues, which I'll just get into in this video. Once we have the self-awareness down, if we repeat that on a day-to-day basis, we should see an improvement in our mental health, in terms of anxiety and panic disorder as well. I just want to begin by talking about just kind of the structure of the brain and what it is inside the brain that causes you to actually respond in fear to certain cues in your environment. The part of the brain that elicits a fear response is the limbic system of the brain. And the limbic system, it's not like the limbic system generally, but specifically inside the limbic system, there is a part of it called the amygdala. And the amygdala is an almond-shaped gland in the brain that regulates your emotion and regulates fear. So essentially, we could call the amygdala like basically the fear control center of the brain, and or the emotional control center of the brain. And essentially, what the way the limbic system was actually formed was back in the time of our in the caveman time, or the time of our ancestors. We lived in a very harsh environment, an environment that was a lot different to where we find ourselves today. Okay, today we live in a relatively pretty good, safe environment where a lot of things are already taken care of for us, such as, you know, the police are protecting us. We have supermarkets around the corner. You know, we have transportation, we have shelter, we have all of these services at our whim. And essentially, survival is already taken care of for us. So back in the time of our ancestors, things were a lot different. The environment they found themselves in was quite the opposite to what we find ourselves in now. And the environment they found themselves in was an environment so harsh they had to fight for survival every day, and come out as survival of the fittest. And the way that our ancestors were going to win this game of survival of the fittest was to have a very sophisticated kind of way of dealing with stresses in an instant, where when danger is presented to them, they can respond in an instant, so that they come out of the situation alive, so that they can reproduce, and the cycle goes on, and so we become mankind that we see today. And essentially, for this thing to happen, for us to come out as the winners of survival of the fittest, we needed something in our brains to actually allow us to instantly react to stress. And that's where the limbic system of the brain was formed. And that's the first part of the brain that was ever formed, a very mammalian, very caveman part of the brain. Okay, and the limbic system is comprised of the amygdala, the hippocampus, the thalamus, and I think a few others, but I'm just mainly focusing on the parts of the limbic system that is causing anxiety and panic attacks for us today, okay? And essentially, what happens is when we experience a stressor, okay, during our day-to-day lives, when we experience something that causes us to respond in stress or fear, there is a message being sent to the amygdala, and the amygdala is activating as the fear control center of your brain and hijacks your brain, okay? And this is what I believe is to be called emotional hijacking or something like that. But it is definitely a known phenomenon where when we are presented with a certain auditory or visual cue, the amygdala hijacks the brain, goes on alert, on overdrive, and instantly sends a stress response, kicking the body into gear for fight or flight, which activates the sympathetic nervous system, which is the fight or flight nervous system, and releases adrenaline, stress hormones such as adrenaline and cortisol throughout your body to respond in fear. And these hormones such as adrenaline and cortisol actually are what raises our heart rates, causes our breath to actually quicken, to become very rapid, and that's where we find ourselves hyperventilating, and it causes blood vessels to restrict in our body but to expand in our muscles in order to use those muscles to the best of our capabilities to fight the danger or run away from the danger. Okay, now the problem here is that in many people with anxiety and panic disorder, these people have an overactive amygdala. Okay, and the amygdala is the emotional control center of the brain. And what happens is when we receive certain auditory or visual cues, the stimuli is received by the thalamus. Okay, and let's say, for example, you receive some kind of visual cue, such as you're seeing someone being chased with a knife in the street, let's say, and that cue, that stimuli hits your retinas, and the information is picked up from the thalamus, and that that information is branched off in two different areas of the brain. Okay, the information is sent off to the amygdala and is also sent off to the neocortex. And what has been discovered is that the thalamus actually sends the information to the amygdala quicker than the neocortex. And this is how our brains are hijacked by the amygdala, is because the amygdala receives the information first. And the way it receives this information first is that there are a bundle of nerves that connect the amygdala to the thalamus, and the information is received by the amygdala through a neural back alley, if you will. Okay, through a shortcut, through a short circuit into the amygdala, and it has been found out that the neocortex takes double the amount of time it takes for the amygdala to respond. Okay, and let's say something happens to us that just pisses us off. For example. Okay, let's say that someone says something about a relative that really hurts you deep inside. Okay, you're insulted. Okay, you love this relative, and as soon as we receive that auditory cue, okay, the amygdala sees that as a threat and hijacks the brain, responds in emotion, and will cause you to do something that shouldn't be appropriate in the context of the situation. Okay, and you could respond by physically attacking this person, like instantly. You could respond by, you could respond by, say, if you haven't reasoned it out or judged it enough, you could go to their house and egg their house or something, for example. I don't know, but the thing is that when the amygdala hijacks the brain, that's where most often those there are those of us who say, oh, I don't know what came over me. I was in a blind rage. And it's true, we don't know, we literally don't know what actually went over us when we responded so emotionally to a certain given situation. And that's because the amygdala's hijacked the brain, the neocortex isn't involved at all. And so that's where we experience something called, blind rage. I was in a blind rage. But it's not just anger I'm just talking about. That's just one example, but also I'm talking about fear as well. I should be talking more primarily about fear. And we could respond in fear in many, many different situations, okay? While the amygdala hijacks the brain, the neocortex is still taking time to judge the situation and figure out whether, and to figure out an appropriate response to the situation. And so, seeing as it takes double the time for the neocortex to respond to the visual or auditory stimuli, because there is a lot more brain circuitry involved in the neocortex, that means that we aren't in control. We aren't in control of the response to the fear response that has occurred. We aren't in control of our reaction to the situation at hand. And so it is important to kind of understand or realize what is going on inside your brain that is causing you to respond so instantaneously to a stressor. Hey guys, I just decided to cut the video short there just because it's getting pretty long and drawn out. I'm trying to get over my umming and ahhing in the video, so I apologize for that. This is my first real good attempt at trying to explain what's happening with anxiety in your bodies. But please stay tuned for the next video and video after that. I'm just still doing some editing and uploading these videos as well, but I'm going to upload the second half of that video I did yesterday. So, that it's a bit more broken up, so, you can take it one bite at a time rather than having to sit through for freaking 20, 30 minutes bored out of your mind. And I'm trying to make this as informative and as less boring as possible, given, the way I'm starting out right now. So, yeah. Anyways, enjoy the second part, and there'll also be a third thing that I just spoke about a little bit earlier today that I'll just upload in just a moment too, okay? So, catch you around, guys. Peace out.